Sometimes I look over the map of Seoul, searching for a new neighborhood to explore. But when you see all these places, you start to wonder what stories might be hidden there, or if there's anything interesting at all, and whether I will actually find it. This time I did. I found a restaurant called Baldy's Restaurant. And as a bald man myself, that's when I knew I had to go to Jangwi-dong in Seongbuk-gu to see what else it has to offer. Here we go again, this time Jangwi-dong in Seongbuk-gu district, right over here. Let's go and meet historian Ji-hoon, who's going to show us around. It is his neighborhood, his own neighborhood. So I'm really excited to hear about what he has to tell us. Let's go. All right, guys, we are in Jangwi-dong.
Jangwi-dong here.
Together with Ji-hoon, the legendary historian. He's back in the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
So this is your hood?
Yeah, this is my hood. Like, I've been living here for about 6-7 years now. Rather uneventful, but you have some like hidden surprises here and there. So that's what I'm going to show later.
I mean, right from the bat. Interesting house here.
So this house is one of the examples that was built in the beginning in around 1960, 61, 62. The government started to build what they call the 부흥주택 or 재건주택, reconstruction houses, reconstruction after the war. Jangwi-dong was actually one of the first areas to have this massive housing projects going in. They used to have, I don't know, like 2,000 of these houses around this neighborhood.
2,000 of these?
Uh-huh. A lot of them had been demolished to make way for like the big new apartments over there.
It looks a bit Western to me.
It is kind of Western, and that was the whole point. Could always still, like back in the early 60s, you could still build a hanok, but the whole point was to, you know, introduce this like new lifestyle. And this is another example of some of the very earliest reconstruction housing projects. So what we saw earlier was a much later version of it, but this is pretty much how it started in early 1961, 1962.
Yeah, well, if you're into houses and architecture, it's definitely not a boring area. You can still find these houses sprinkled around, making it fun to get lost. But we're not going to. Ji-hoon is taking me to a very special hanok, a Korean traditional house.
Jangwi-dong was always a upper middle class neighborhood, actually. They had a lot of artists, film actors, actresses, directors, Navy commanders.
Historians like Ji-hoon?
Well, that's one of the best compliments I had. This is a 진흥 선원. 선원 literally means Zen house, Zen retreat / monastery / whatever. This is not your average, 가회동 북촌 hanok thingy.
Exactly.
This is what they call a stately home, and you'll see how massive it is once you actually get in. Everything about this house is original, so awesome. There's no reconstruction in this house.
It's a Zen house today, but what's more interesting is the, well, kind of sad history of this stately hanok. But it's a story that's making it all the more worth it to visit.
This belonged to the powerful Yoon family, not the other Yoons that we are so concerned about. This house belonged to a relative of the royal family. It belonged to this particular man named Yoon Ui-sun, who was the husband to the princess, who was the third daughter of King Sunjo. So he is literally son-in-law to the king. The marriage ended in tragedy, unfortunately, because the princess was too young when she was pregnant with her child. She died along with the child while she was pregnant. According to the laws of the late Joseon, once you marry a royal, you're not supposed to remarry. Who's going to be topping over like another royal? So later on, he actually adopted his brother's son, Yoon Yong-gu, who was quite a prominent man, politician and cabinet member of King Kojong's cabinet in the 1870s and 1880s. Later in the 1890s and onward, he kind of like left politics altogether and decided to settle in down this house. The princess tomb was actually on the other side. So in this house, in effect, actually served as a kind of like a maintenance place. You can see that the whole house is situated on top of a large platform. This is a whole man-made platform.
Oh, they elevated.
They had elevated the house. This is a house that belonged to a royal.
Above everyone else.
Above everyone else. What you see here is the main house, and this is pretty much what we call a sarangchae, like man's quarter. And I can see why they actually rebuilt much of this house around 1865. By this point, there were only men in the house. Like sarangchae usually is not this big, but then as you can see, it's massive because pretty much predominantly occupied by men. Have some of these very odd-looking octagonal-shaped stones on one end, the other end as well. These are what they call sundial bases. So in the old days, Korean people used to keep their time with sundials. Upper middle-class households usually had one or two in their house in the middle of the garden so that they can always keep time, unlike everybody else.
So this is the clock, basically.
Yeah, basically what is left of it.
Sometimes the fun of exploring a hanok is hidden in the details, like the elevation, the sundial base, or this old horse stepping stone. But there's more. And for that, we need to sneak into the back of the house.
So this is the so-called pavilion.
Oh.
See this gigantic paveway, and it's even higher than the main house. Meaning,
Oh, yeah.
This is probably the place that belonged to the princess because she was the highest person in the family.
She's more important.
She's more important than her husband.
Elevated even higher.
Even higher, way higher.
Yeah.
So
That's so
obviously
funny.
it's now turned into another Buddhist building. It has, unlike the majority of houses, buildings of this time period, it also has these brickwork, which is very unusual. And I love this little touch over here.
Ah, nice.
So they used to do this kind of thing all the time, but it's another one of those dying traditions. You could see that there was a stairwell that led to somewhere, and they used to have a family shrine, just like any proper upper-class Yangban houses would do. They usually have their tablets of the ancestors and all that. After Yoon Young-gu died in 1939, I think, we know that the house was immediately sold after. Actually, what happens is when they sold the house, they usually destroy the family shrine because, again, this is too personal.
Are they afraid of like evil spirits or something?
Or evil spirits, or some kind of a vengeful previous owner's ghost, or whatever. That was a very Korean thinking back in the day. Funny thing though, this temple used to run its own kindergarten, but then the city people came in and said, the kids are wreaking havoc of the houses, like the historic structure. So you had to move it elsewhere. They
Those
still
damn
operated.
kids. Maybe at some point during your visit in Korea, you may think, blech, not another hanok, or find them looking similar. But that's when the story of the original house owner comes in and make it all worth it again.
So this is one of the very, very, very few surviving what they call clubhouses of a professional athlete team. Korean athlete teams do not usually have a clubhouse of their own, but there you have it. It's a gigantic basketball court, and this belongs to the 우리은행 women's basketball team. This team is the oldest extant private athletic clubs that we have in the country. They actually won the second place female basketball championship in 1967. The current building you see was actually completely rebuilt in 1981, but then this Jangwi-dong 합숙소 / the clubhouse was here since 1968.
So they still use it?
Yeah, this is a very active building.
Oh, it's still their clubhouse then?
It's still
okay. I
professional
thought we were
clubhouse.
talking about something that
It happened in the past? No.
Days, huh?
No.
Oh.
It is still active.
Just don't think they deserve to be in a prison. Come on, that looks so depressing.
It's kind of depressing, and again, it's early 80s building, so.
Yeah, I know. But I don't give it a nice paint or write your achievements on the wall. Do something.
Yeah. And yeah, look at this. This is like the whole thing right in front of you. This is screaming the 1990s.
Yeah, it does.
Right, all of that.
It turns out Jangwi-dong still has areas with a strong 1980s and 90s vibe. Not much has changed here at all. You can feel it everywhere. It reminds me of the feeling I get when traveling through small countryside villages. Except this is still Seoul. But I probably won't be able to experience this for much longer. In a few years, this will likely all be gone. In Changwi anyways. Just like many parts of Jangwi-dong already are. Gabi, Jackbang.
Yeah, and it is open, it is still in business. Manhwa and what they call light novels. There were like hundreds of these places when I was growing up. But then it's very difficult to find anything nowadays, and this one is interesting. Soul Survivor. I can't think of any similar businesses still operating in this way in the whole east side of Seoul right now.
Visually looks so interesting. 혹시 이 재킷도 온라인으로 파세요?
아니 온라인은 안 해요.
아 여기만?
렌탈만 한 데로.
여기는 렌탈만.
네.
온라인은 안 해요.
네, 여기 오래됐나요? 가게는?
30년 넘었죠?
여기 뭐 요즘엔 좀 손님이 좀 오시나요? 별로.
요새는 뭐. 그 전에 처음에 아저씨가 여기 사셨거든요.
아, 그래요?
그때 알바했으니까 내가.
아, 그러셨어요?
아, 그래요?
처음에 여셨을 때 아저씨가 있었고 그 아저씨 중간에 언니가 또 한 명 있어요.
아, 여기
개발
알바로
좀-
시작하셨어요?
네, 알바를 했어요.
어.
그냥 물려받으셔서 이렇게 하시는 거예요?
네, 그러니까 중간에 어디 갔다가 나도
아,
네, 다른 데 이사 갔다가 다시 왔다가.
감사합니다.
네,
감사합니다.
안녕하세요.
네.
안녕하세요. It's like so funny if you go to the Seoul Yoksabangmugwan. There's a section where they show the old Bimatko restaurant.
Yeah.
But there's still like restaurants like that still operating in the city. This is what you would see in the countryside now, like whole villages
nowadays,
like that.
but then it's still Jangwi-dong.
Yes.
And this whole Songbanggoge proper, like this hillside, I mean, it's still filled with all these like very 80s, 90s looking, like establishments.
I love this, like the Sujong Mekchu Yangju.
That's what they call a pangsokjip. It's like not exactly for like, safe, like
How do you say
drinking
that?
only kind of places. Yeah. All of these buildings are not uniform. Like they have their own characters. They have their own.
But that's the charm of this area.
charm. Like it's a total. Like it's a charm of its own.
You can visit a neighborhood and focus on specific historical sites, like the hanok we saw earlier, but sometimes simply walking around and absorbing the atmosphere can be just as satisfying, if not more. That's exactly how I felt in Jangwi-dong. Another house worth a quick stop is this one. The building dates back to the 1970s, but it was remodeled in the 1980s by the famous Korean architect Kim Jong-un. What I liked most, though, was the garden, especially this beautifully designed rain pipe.
See, it's a
Changi
fairly-
Traditional Market. Oh, they just recently...
They did this little
redid the ceiling.
section, the buildings itself and the whole area, it's still pretty much like how it was when I first moved here.
Yeah.
Like prior to that, they had a rather old wooden facade and wooden and brick facade and all that sort of thing, but they just updated it a few years ago. This still like is a local market.
Yes.
And it's only usually for the locals, as you can see.
Yeah.
Mostly older men and women. It's a massive hanok again.
Oh, yeah.
Fairly big one. It's now a 고깃집, 갈비집 actually. Legend has it that this building, at least parts of it, belong to what they called a 주정소. 주정소 is a type of like makeshift palace or sort of like a stop for the kings when they're having a big procession going somewhere. In this case, this big road, which now has become the like 동부순환로 and all that, used to be what they call the 능행로. 능행 means the royal tomb visits. So kings should actually have to go to visit those royal tombs to pay their respect. And that was the main road. And supposedly this building was used as a kind of like a stop. I mean, they do a very good hanok and galbi.
I see the Hano Bosot Bulgogi.
That's very good.
Making me hungry. See, no matter how uneventful a neighborhood may look at first sight, there are always treasures and stories waiting to be found. Jangwi-dong will go on the map as the home of a stately hanok. Now, one thing we didn't cover is this church. Now a strange fortified island in the middle of a redevelopment zone. The reality is, the situation here is extremely controversial and still ongoing, involving extremism, conflicts, and even hired goons. It's such a messy story that I'd rather not burn my fingers on it. But if you're curious, look it up. It's quite a story. Subscribe and like the video, and we'll see you next time. Houdoe.